My name is Sophia Elise Clean. I am 27 years old, and I live in Seattle. And I am standing on a stage that most people only dream of reaching. It is commencement day at MIT. The lights are bright, and the air smells like fresh rain and expensive perfume. All around me, students are crying happy tears. They are hugging their parents, throwing their caps in the air, and taking pictures that will sit on mantelpieces forever. I am not crying. I am staring at row 12, seats A, B, and C. They are empty. My parents aren't late. They aren't stuck in traffic. They are 300 miles away, sitting in a hot, crowded high school auditorium. They chose to watch my younger sister, Mira, perform in a local ballet recital instead of watching me become an engineer. I worked for 4 years for this moment. I stayed up for nights without sleep. I fought for every grade. And in the end, I walked across that stage to total silence from the people who gave me life. That silence didn't just hurt. It changed me. It was the moment I realized that to save myself, I had to lose them. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Sophia Elise Clean. I am 27 years old. Love in our home wasn't shared. It was assigned. And in the Clean household, the assignment was permanent. The love went to Mira. I realized this when I was very young. It wasn't a sudden realization, like waking up from a bad dream. It was a slow understanding, like noticing a crack in the ceiling that gets a little bigger every day until you realize the roof is going to fall in. Our house was a shrine to my sister. If you walked through our front door, the first thing you saw was a gallery wall dedicated to her. There was Mira in her first pink tutu at age 4, her hands thrown up in the air, a wide, toothless grin on her face. There was Mira at age 6, holding a bouquet of roses my father had bought her. Mira at age 9, doing a split on the front lawn. My parents called it the Wall of Joy. I was in the pictures too, but you had to look hard to find me. I was usually in the background, out of focus, or standing half cut out of the frame. There was one picture of me holding a science fair trophy when I was 10. It was placed on the bottom shelf of a bookcase in the hallway, behind a potted fern. You had to physically move the plant to see my face. I remember asking my mother about it once. I was 11. I was standing in the hallway, looking at the wall of Mira. "Mom," I asked, "why aren't there any pictures of my spelling bee win up there?" My mother didn't even look up from her phone. She was busy scrolling through a website for dance costumes. "Oh, Sophia, don't be jealous. That wall is for action shots. Ballet is visual. Spelling is, well, it's just standing there, isn't it?" "But I won," I said. "I beat everyone in the district." "We know, honey," she said, finally glancing at me with a look that felt like a pat on the head. "We're proud of you, but Mira needs the confidence boost. Being on stage is hard pressure. You're naturally smart. You don't need the applause the way she does." That was the first time I heard it. You don't need it. It became the soundtrack of my childhood. Mira was 2 years younger than me, but she took up all the space in the room. She was loud, dramatic, and demanding. If she scratched her knee, the whole house stopped. My father would rush to get the first aid kit, my mother would offer her ice cream, and I would be told to be quiet so Mira could rest. When I was 12, I fell off my bike and gashed my elbow deep enough to need stitches. I walked into the kitchen, blood dripping down my arm onto the linoleum. My mother was on the phone with Mira's dance instructor, arguing about a solo role. She saw me, covered the phone with her hand, and whispered, "Sophia, please don't bleed on the floor. Wrap a towel around it. I have to handle this crisis. They're trying to give the Swan Queen part to that Reynolds girl." I stood there for a full minute, holding my dripping elbow, waiting for her to hang up. She didn't, she just kept arguing about the Swan Queen. So I walked to the bathroom, washed the cut myself, wrapped it in a hand towel, and walked 3 blocks to the urgent care clinic. I sat in the waiting room alone for 2 hours. When the doctor asked where my parents were, I lied. "They're on their way," I said. "They just got stuck in traffic." They weren't in traffic. They were in the living room, analyzing a video of Mira's pirouettes. When I got home that night, with 5 stitches in my arm, my father looked up from the TV. "Where have you been?" "Dinner was an hour ago." "I went to the doctor," I said, holding up my bandaged arm. "I needed stitches." He looked surprised, then sighed. "You should have told us, Sophia. We would have taken you after the video review. You're so independent, sometimes I forget you're only 12. He didn't apologize. He complimented me on being independent. That was my role. I was the low-maintenance child. I was the one who did my own homework, made my own lunch, and didn't cause drama. I thought that if I was perfect, If I caused zero problems, they would finally notice me. I thought that if I made their lives easier, they would love me for it. I was wrong. Being easy didn't make them love me more. It just made me invisible. I started staying at school late. I joined the robotics club, the math team, the debate squad. Not just because I liked them, but because the school janitor, Mr. Henderson, asked me more questions about my day than my own parents did. "Working on that circuit board again, Sophia?" he'd ask, leaning on his broom. "You're gonna be an engineer, I can tell." "I hope so," I'd say. "Your folks must be thrilled," he'd say. I would just smile, a fake, tight smile. "Yeah, they're thrilled." I learned to lie to protect them. I learned to pretend that my family was normal. I didn't tell my friends that my parents missed my choir concert because Mira had a costume emergency. A zipper got stuck. I didn't tell them that for Christmas, Mira got a new laptop and I got a gift card to a bookstore because you like to read and we didn't know what else you wanted. I became quiet. I stopped asking for things. I stopped asking why not me and started telling myself it doesn't matter. But it did matter. It mattered every single day. By the time I was 14, I understood the hierarchy of our house perfectly. Mira's dance career. Mira's happiness. My parents' comfort, the dog, Sophia, I was below the dog. At least they bought the dog premium food and walked him every day. I was just there. A roommate who didn't pay rent. I remember one night vividly. I was studying for a biology final at the kitchen table. Mira came in, crying because a girl at dance had said her bun was messy. My mother immediately dropped the spatula she was using to cook dinner and rushed to hug her. "Oh baby, don't listen to her," Mom cooed, stroking Mira's hair. "She's just jealous, you are a star." "I want ice cream," Mira sobbed. "Let's go to Dairy Queen." "Of course," Dad said, grabbing his keys. "Let's go get your mind off it." They started walking toward the door. "Mom," I said, "dinner is on the stove, it's burning." "Turn it off, Sophia," she called back over her shoulder. "We'll pick something up. Do you want anything?" "I have a biology final tomorrow," I said. "I need to study." "Okay, well, make yourself a sandwich," she said. "We won't be long." The door closed. The house went silent. I turned off the stove. I looked at the half-cooked chicken. I wasn't hungry. I sat there in the silence, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. I realized then that I wasn't just the strong one. I was the convenient one. I was the child they could leave behind because they knew I wouldn't cry about it. They knew I wouldn't make a scene. I looked at my biology book. "Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell," it said. "I am the powerhouse of this family," I thought bitterly. "I carry the weight so they don't have to." I didn't cry that night. I just opened my book and kept studying. I got an A on the final. When I showed my parents the paper, my dad said, "Good job, kiddo," without looking away from the TV. I took the paper to my room and put it in a drawer with all the other good jobs. It was a drawer full of proof that I was smart, capable, and completely unseen. As I moved into my teenage years, the neglect stopped being accidental and started feeling systematic. It wasn't just that they forgot things. It was that they actively prioritized Mira's potential over my reality. The pattern was always the same. Mira needed something, and I had to sacrifice for it. The biggest blow came when I turned 16. In our town, turning 16 was a big deal. Most of my friends got cars. Nothing fancy, usually old sedans or hand-me-downs, but it was freedom. My parents had promised me, vaguely, years ago, that they would help me get a car. "When you get your license, we'll see," my dad had said. I got my license on my birthday. I aced the test. I came home, license in hand, feeling a rare spark of excitement. I walked into the kitchen where my parents were sitting at the table with a calculator and a stack of bills. "I did it," I said, placing the plastic card on the table. "I'm a licensed driver." "That's great, Sophia," Dad said, rubbing his temples. He looked stressed. "So," I started, trying to keep my voice casual. "I saw a used Honda Civic for sale down the street. It's cheap. I have some money saved from babysitting, but I'd need you guys to help with the rest. Like we talked about." My mother and father exchanged a look. It was the look. The one that meant Sophia is asking for something, and the answer is no. "Honey," Mom started, her voice dropping into that fake gentle tone she used when she was about to disappoint me. "We can't do the car right now." "Why?" I asked. "You promised." "We didn't promise," Dad corrected quickly. "We said we'd see, and we've looked at the finances. Mira has been accepted into the elite summer intensive in New York. Do you know how much that costs?" I felt my stomach drop. "Mira is 14. It's a summer camp." "It is not a camp." Mom snapped, her voice suddenly sharp. It is a pre-professional intensive. This is her future, Sophia. She has a real shot at a career in dance. We have to invest in that. But I need to get to school, I argued. I need to get to my robotics club. I need to get to my internship at the lab. There's a bus, Dad said. The city bus stops right at the corner. It's perfectly safe. The bus takes an hour, I said, my voice rising. Driving takes 10 minutes. If I take the bus, I can't do the morning shift at the lab. Then you'll have to quit the lab, Mom said, shrugging. Sophia, please don't be selfish. Your sister is talented. We all have to make sacrifices to support her. Selfish. The word slapped me across the face. I was the one with a 4 GPA. I was the one cooking my own dinners. I was the one asking for a used Honda while they were spending thousands on leotards and toe shoes and trips to New York. And I was the selfish one. I'm not being selfish, I whispered. I'm just asking for the same support you give her. It's not the same, Dad said, closing the checkbook. Mira is sensitive, she needs us. You, Sophia, you're tough, you're a survivor. You'll figure out the bus schedule. You always figure it out. They bought Mira a new set of luggage for her trip to New York the next day. It cost more than the down payment on the Honda would have been. I took the bus. For 2 years, I rode that bus. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. to catch the first route so I could get to the lab before school. I sat on the cracked plastic seats, watching the world wake up, feeling a cold, hard stone forming in my chest. Every morning, I watched my parents drive Mira to school because she couldn't carry her dance bag on the bus. It wasn't just the car, it was everything. When I was 17, I was named a National Merit Scholar. It was a huge honor. There was a banquet at the school. Parents were invited. I put the invitation on the fridge a month in advance. I reminded them weekly. Tuesday the 12th, I'd say, 7 p.m. Please don't schedule anything. We know, Dad would say. The morning of the banquet, Mira woke up with a sore throat. Just a sore throat. No fever, but she panicked. My voice, my breathing. I can't rehearse if I'm sick. My mother went into full nurse mode. Tea, humidifiers, blankets. At 6:30 p.m., I came downstairs dressed in my nice black dress. My parents were on the couch. Dad was reading a magazine. Mom was rubbing Mira's feet. Ready to go? I asked. Dad looked up confused. Go where? I felt the blood drain from my face. The banquet, the National Merit Scholar banquet, it's tonight. Oh, Dad said. He looked at Mom. Is that tonight? I can't leave Mira, Mom said immediately. She's sick, Sophia, she needs me. She has a sore throat, I said, my voice shaking. She's 15, not 5. She can watch TV for 2 hours alone. Sophia, Mom scolded, don't be heartless, I'm not leaving my sick child. I looked at my father. Dad, can you come? He hesitated. He looked at the TV, then at Mira, then at me. I think I should stay and help your mother, just in case she gets worse. You know how Mira gets when she's anxious. I stood there in my black dress, feeling like a fool. It's an award, I said. I'm getting an award. We're proud of you, Dad said, but he didn't stand up. Bring the certificate home. We'll put it on the fridge, not the wall, the fridge, where it would be covered by Mira's diet plan and dance schedule. I'll drive myself, I said. Take the station wagon, Dad said, tossing me the keys. Be careful. I drove to the banquet alone. I sat at a table with my physics teacher and his wife because my parents' seats were empty. When they called my name, I walked up to the podium. I looked out at the audience. I saw other parents beaming, holding up phones, cheering. I saw my empty seats. I shook the principal's hand. I smiled. I accepted the certificate. Inside, I was screaming. When I got home, the house was dark. They had all gone to sleep. There was a note on the counter, leftover lasagna in the fridge. Congrats on the award. Love, Mom and Dad. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. I didn't eat the lasagna. That night, lying in bed, I made a pact with myself. I am leaving, I told the ceiling. I am going to work harder than anyone else. I am going to get into the best college in the country. And I am going to leave this house and never ask them for a single thing ever again. You're the strong one, they always said. Sophia will be fine. They used my strength as an excuse to neglect me. They punished me for being capable. Well, I decided then and there, I would be strong enough to walk away. I got into MIT early admission. When the acceptance letter came, I didn't run to show them. I didn't scream. I just placed the letter on the kitchen table during dinner. I got into MIT, I said, stabbing a piece of broccoli. Wow, Dad said. That's in Boston, right? Expensive. I got a full scholarship, I said. You don't have to pay a dime. Relief washed over his face. Not pride, relief. That's my girl, always looking out for the family budget. Mira's tuition is going up next year, so that helps a lot. Congratulations, Sophia, Mom said. But Boston is so far, who will help me with the garden? I'm sure Mira can help, I said. They both laughed, a genuine hearty laugh. Mira, gardening, Dad chuckled. She can't risk her hands. No, we'll just have to hire someone. They were willing to hire someone to replace my chores, but they couldn't spare a night to see me win an award. The patterns were set in stone. I was the utility player. I was the resource. I was the employee of the family, not the daughter. And as graduation from high school approached, I stopped expecting them to change. I just started counting down the days. But I was naive. I thought the high school years were the worst of it. I thought that once I left for college, the distance would make it better. I thought that maybe, if I did something truly massive, like graduating from the top engineering school in the world, they would finally, truly see me. I was wrong. The biggest hurt wasn't the daily cuts of childhood. It was the final, brutal stab that was waiting for me 4 years later. Graduation day smelled like fresh beginnings. The air in Cambridge was crisp, carrying the scent of the Charles River and the blooming flowers on campus. It was the kind of day that felt scripted for a movie. The sun was bright but not too hot. The sky was a perfect, unblemished blue. For my classmates, this was the best day of their lives. We were graduating from MIT. We had survived 4 years of the hardest engineering curriculum in the world. We had pulled all-nighters, cried over calculus, built robots that failed, and then built robots that worked. We were tired, but we were triumphant. I stood in the sea of black robes, adjusting my cap. My tassel tickled my cheek. Around me the noise was deafening. Parents were shouting names, waving signs, and blowing air horns. There was a frantic, joyful energy as everyone tried to spot their families in the massive crowd. I see them, my friend David yelled, waving his arms at a group of people in the bleachers. Mom, over here, he turned to me, his face glowing. Soph, are your folks here yet? We should get a picture together with both our families. My stomach tightened. I checked my phone for the 10th time in 10 minutes. No texts, no missed calls. They're running a little late, I lied. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. Flight delay, probably. Bummer, David said, but he was too happy to dwell on it. They'll make it for the walk, though. That's the important part. I nodded. Yeah, that's the important part. I had sent them the tickets 3 months ago. I had booked their hotel rooms myself using my savings from my summer internship. I had sent them the itinerary. Breakfast at 8, ceremony at 10, lunch at 1. 2 days ago, my mom had called. We're so excited, honey, she had said. But Mira has a dress rehearsal for her spring showcase the night before. We might be tired. It's okay if you're tired, I had said. Just be there, please. Of course, she said. We wouldn't miss it. I looked up at the bleachers. I knew exactly where their seats were. Section 104, row 12, seats A, B, and C. I scanned the crowd. I saw hats, sunglasses, balloons. I counted the rows. 10, 11, 12. There they were. 3 gray folding chairs, empty. Maybe they were in the bathroom. Maybe they were getting coffee. Maybe they were lost on campus. The ceremony began. The dean started speaking about the future, about innovation, about how we were the leaders of tomorrow. I tried to listen, but my ears were ringing. I kept glancing back at section 104. 10 minutes passed. The seats were empty. 30 minutes passed. The seats were empty. An hour passed. The sun shifted. The glare hit the metal of the empty chairs, making them shine like beacons of rejection. I started to feel a cold sweat on the back of my neck. They weren't coming. My rational brain tried to fight the panic. Maybe there was an accident. Maybe the plane crashed, but deep down I knew there was no accident. If there had been an accident, someone would have called. This was a choice. Then the names began. Alvarado, Mateo, cheers. Anderson, Sarah, air horns. Baker, Emily. A father screaming, "That's my girl." The line moved forward. I was getting closer to the stage. My heart was pounding, not with excitement but with dread. I was about to walk across the stage in front of thousands of people, and the only people who mattered to me were 300 miles away. I saved 3 seats, I whispered to myself. I saved them. It felt childish. Like saving a slice of cake for a friend who never shows up. Clean, Sophia. The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers. I stepped onto the stage. The lights were blinding. I looked out into the ocean of faces. I looked directly at section 104. Empty, empty, empty. There was a polite ripple of applause from the general audience, the kind of applause strangers give just to be polite. But there were no screams, no whistles. No, that's my daughter. Just a hollow, echoing silence where my family's love should have been. I shook the dean's hand. He smiled at me, a generic, proud smile. Congratulations, he said. Thank you, I said. My voice was steady. My face was a mask. I walked across the rest of the stage. I descended the stairs. I went back to my seat. I didn't cry. I was too shocked to cry. I felt numb, like I had been given a shot of Novocaine straight to the heart. I sat there, clutching my diploma, the piece of paper that proved I was smart, dedicated, and successful. But looking at those empty chairs, I didn't feel successful. I felt like that little girl in the hallway again, standing behind the fern, waiting for someone to move the plant and see me. They hadn't just missed a ceremony. They had missed the culmination of my entire life's work up to this point. They had looked at my biggest achievement and decided it wasn't worth the price of a plane ticket. I sat through the rest of the graduation, another 2 hours. I watched every other student get hugged. I watched fathers crying. I watched mothers adjusting caps. When it was over, everyone threw their caps in the air. I held mine in my lap. I didn't want to celebrate. I just wanted to disappear. After the ceremony, the campus turned into a chaotic party. Families were everywhere. There were picnics on the grass, champagne corks popping, and flashes of cameras going off every second. I walked away from the crowd. I went to a quiet bench near the river, away from the laughter. I sat down and took my phone out of my pocket. I needed to know. I needed to hear the excuse. Was it a car crash? Was it a heart attack? Was it something that would make this forgivable? There was one text message. From Mom. I stared at the screen for a long time before I opened it. My thumb hovered over the notification. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for tragedy. I opened it. Sweetheart, Mira's recital time changed to this morning. It was a last-minute switch. We couldn't miss it. She had the solo in the second act. She was breathtaking. The way she moved, just incredible. We'll celebrate with you when you come home to visit. How was your little ceremony? Send pics. I read it once. Then I read it again. The world stopped spinning. The sounds of the river, the traffic, the distant cheering, it all faded into a buzzing white noise. I dissected the message like a biology specimen. Mira's recital time changed. So they chose. They had a conflict and they made a choice. MIT graduation or a local dance recital. They chose the dance. She was breathtaking. They were there, in that sweaty high school auditorium, watching her. They were probably holding flowers. They were probably crying tears of joy for her pliés while I was walking across a stage alone. We'll celebrate when you come home. An afterthought, a rain check on my life. But the words that killed me, the words that took a knife and twisted it in my gut, were, how was your little ceremony? Little, my MIT graduation. The result of 4 years of grinding work. The sleepless nights in the lab. The physics problems that made me cry. The loneliness of riding the bus at 6 a.m. The scholarships I won so they wouldn't have to pay, all of it. Reduced to little. Little ceremony. Like it was a kindergarten graduation where we wore paper hats. Like it was cute. Like it was a hobby. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It wasn't a scream. It was a quiet, internal breaking of a bone that had been under pressure for 22 years. For my entire life, I had been making excuses for them. They're busy. They're stressed. Mira needs more help. They love me, they just show it differently. I looked at the text again. How was your little ceremony? This wasn't love. This wasn't showing it differently. This was dismissal. This was emotional erasure. They didn't see me. They didn't want to see me. To them, I was just a background character in the movie of Mira's life. I was the extra, and extras don't get the spotlight, even when they earn it. I looked at the river. The water was dark and moving fast. I realized then that if I went home, if I went back to that house, nothing would change. I would walk in with my MIT diploma, and they would say, "That's nice, honey," and then tell me to be quiet because Mira was sleeping. I would always be little to them. I felt a tear finally roll down my cheek. It was hot and angry. "No," I said out loud. The word felt strange in the open air. "No," I said again louder. I wasn't little, I was an engineer. I was strong, I was a survivor. And I was done begging for scraps at a table where I wasn't welcome. I didn't reply to the text. I didn't type out a furious paragraph. I didn't call them screaming. I looked at my phone. I went to my contacts. I clicked on Mom, scroll down, block caller. I clicked on Dad, scroll down, block caller. I clicked on Mira. She hadn't even texted me. She was probably too busy being breathtaking. Block caller. I stared at the screen. The names were grayed out. The connection was severed. It felt terrifying. It felt like I was cutting the rope that held me to the side of a cliff. But as I sat there, watching a rowing team cut through the water, another feeling washed over me. Relief. I didn't have to wait for them anymore. I didn't have to check the empty seats. I didn't have to fight for the bottom shelf of the display case. I stood up. I wiped my face. I picked up my diploma. I walked back toward my dorm room. I had a lot of packing to do. I had a job offer in Seattle, a city on the other side of the country, a city where nobody knew me as Mira's sister or the easy one. I was going to Seattle. And I wasn't telling them. The text message was the last thing my mother ever said to the old Sophia. The Sophia who desperately wanted their approval died on that bench by the river. The woman who stood up was someone else entirely. And she had work to do. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone into the Charles River. I didn't write a 10-page letter explaining my pain. I just went quiet. There is a specific kind of silence that comes after a final decision. It's not peaceful exactly. It's heavy. It's the sound of a door locking that you know will never open again. I walked back to my dorm room. It was chaos. My roommates were packing, laughing, and drinking champagne with their parents. My roommate Sarah was hugging her mom. Sophia, Sarah chirped. Did your folks make it? We missed you at the reception. No, I said. My voice sounded flat like a computer. They couldn't make it. Flight issues. I lied easily now. It was a shield. Oh no, that's awful, Sarah's mom said, looking at me with genuine pity. Well, come have some cake with us. You shouldn't be alone. I have to pack, I said. I have a flight to catch in the morning. I walked into my small room and shut the door. I locked it. I pulled my suitcase out from under the bed. It was the same cheap suitcase I had used since freshman year. I started packing. I didn't fold things nicely. I just put them in. My clothes, my books, my toiletries. I came to the framed photo on my desk. It was taken 3 years ago at Christmas. My parents were sitting in armchairs, smiling. Mira was sitting on the floor between them, holding the dog. I was standing behind the chair, half of my face obscured by a shadow. I looked at the photo. I looked at their smiles. They looked so happy. They looked like a perfect family. I realized I wasn't part of the family. I was the photographer. I was the observer. I was the shadow. I took the photo out of the frame. I didn't tear it up. That would have been too dramatic. I just dropped it into the trash can next to my desk. Then I threw an empty coffee cup on top of it. Trash, just trash. I finished packing. I looked around the room. 4 years of my life were in 2 suitcases and a backpack. I sat on the bare mattress. My phone lay on the nightstand. It buzzed once. A text from Mira. Did you see the pics I sent? The flowers were huge. I didn't open it. I picked up the phone. I went to the settings. I changed my number. It took 5 minutes. I logged into my carrier's app, paid a $15 fee, and selected a new number with a Seattle area code. The old number, the one my parents had, the one Mira had, the one I had waited by for years hoping for a call that mattered, was gone. Disconnected. If they called me now, they would hear a recording. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. It was the most honest message I could send them. I was no longer in service. I was no longer serving their needs, their ego, or their schedule. I ordered a cab for 4 a.m. I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the party down the hall. I felt like a ghost. I felt like I had already died and was just waiting to move on to the afterlife. The taxi ride to Logan Airport was a blur of streetlights and dark highways. The driver didn't talk. I was grateful. At the airport, I checked my bags. I went through security. I sat at the gate. I kept waiting for the panic to hit. I kept waiting to feel guilty. I kept waiting for that little voice in my head, my mother's voice, to say, Sophia, you're being dramatic. You're being selfish. But the voice didn't come. Instead, there was just a cold, hard resolve. I boarded the plane. I took a window seat. As the plane lifted off, I watched Boston shrink below me. The Charles River became a thin silver line. The MIT dome became a tiny white dot. I was leaving everything I knew. I was going to a city where I knew no one. I had a job offer, a temporary corporate apartment, and 2 suitcases. I closed my eyes. Goodbye, I thought. Goodbye to the girl who waited. Goodbye to the girl who took the bus. Goodbye to the girl who saved 3 seats. She stayed in Boston. The flight was 6 hours. When we landed in Seattle, it was raining. Of course it was raining. The sky was a sheet of gray steel. I got into another taxi. The driver was a chatty man with a thick beard. "Moving here?" he asked, eyeing my luggage. "Yes," I said. "Family here?" he asked. I looked out the window at the pine trees and the wet pavement. "No," I said, "no family." And for the first time in my life, saying those words didn't hurt. They felt like Freedom Seattle wasn't an escape. It was a reconstruction project. I treated my recovery like an engineering problem. The structure of my life had collapsed due to a faulty foundation, my family. To build a new life, I needed new materials, better supports, and a design that didn't rely on external validation. I moved into a small apartment in Capitol Hill. It wasn't fancy. It had creaky floors and a radiator that clanked in the middle of the night. But it was mine. I paid the rent. I bought the furniture. I bought a gray sofa because I liked gray, not because it was practical. I bought a bright yellow rug because it made me happy. My parents hated yellow. They said it was gaudy. I put the yellow rug right in the center of the living room. I started my job at a tech firm downtown. It was demanding work. I was a junior systems engineer. I spent my days coding, testing, and debugging. The office culture was different from what I expected. People were kind. My manager, Leo, was a gruff man in his 50s who always smelled like bitter coffee. The first week, I made a mistake on a code deployment. I froze. I expected yelling. I expected to be told I was careless. I expected the mirror treatment, where my mistake would be held over my head for months. I walked into Leo's office, my hands shaking. "I messed up the deployment," I said. "I'm sorry, I'll fix it tonight." Leo looked up over his glasses. "Did you break the whole site?" "No, just the login widget." "Okay," he said. "Fix it, then go home. It's 5 p.m. I blinked. "You're not mad," he laughed. "Sophia, you're human. Humans break things. Engineers fix things. Just fix it." I went back to my desk and fixed it. No drama, no guilt trip. Just work. That was the first lesson. Mistakes are not moral failures. I made friends slowly. I was like a stray cat, wary, flinching at sudden movements. Priya sat in the cubicle next to me. She was loud, funny, and brought homemade granola bars every Monday. For 3 months, I politely declined them. "I'm not hungry, thank you," I'd say. One Monday, I hadn't eaten breakfast. My stomach growled. Priya tossed a bar onto my desk. "Eat it clean. It's got chocolate chips. You look like you're fading away." I ate it. It was delicious. "Thank you," I said. "Anytime," she said. Us girls gotta stick together in this brofest. Slowly, Priya chipped away at my walls. She invited me to lunch, then to happy hour, then to a hiking group. Through Priya, I met Jenna. Jenna was a kickboxing instructor. She was fierce and angry in the best way. She taught me how to punch a bag. "Imagine the face of someone who pissed you off," Jenna yelled during a class. I imagined the empty chairs. I imagined the little ceremony text. I punched the bag so hard I bruised my knuckles. "Good," Jenna screamed. "That's the fire, Sophia, let it out." For the first time, I had an outlet for the rage I had swallowed for 20 years. I wasn't the quiet one in that gym. I was a fighter. The biggest test came 6 months after I moved. My birthday. Birthdays in the clean house were always disappointing for me. They usually combined my birthday with a family dinner that ended up being about Mira's schedule. Or they would give me practical gifts. Socks, a calculator, a gift card to the grocery store, while Mira got jewelry and tech. I didn't tell anyone at work it was my birthday. I didn't want the pity. I planned to buy a cupcake, go home, and watch a movie alone. I walked into the office that morning. On my desk, there was a small succulent plant in a white pot, and a card. I opened the card. "Happy birthday, Sophia. Glad you're on the team. Leo, Priya, and the dev squad." It wasn't a big party. It wasn't a car. It was a $5 plant, but they knew. They had checked the HR file or remembered me mentioning it once. They remembered. I sat in my chair and stared at the plant. My throat got tight. "You okay?" Priya asked, rolling her chair over. "Is it the wrong kind of plant? I guessed you liked succulents because you have that cactus background on your screen." She had noticed my screen background. She had noticed. "It's perfect," I choked out. "I love it." "Happy birthday, smarty pants," she said, bumping my shoulder. "Drinks tonight on me." That night, surrounded by people I had known for less than a year, I felt more seen than I had in 2 decades with my family. I realized something profound. Family is not blood. Family is behavior. These people didn't share my DNA. They didn't owe me anything, but they showed up. They paid attention. I stopped checking my old email address. I stopped wondering if my parents were looking for me. I focused on my career. I was promoted after 1 year. I led a team to redesign the company's core infrastructure. I filed 2 patents. I bought a newer car, a Subaru, because everyone in Seattle had one and I could afford it myself. I grew my hair out. I stopped wearing the drab gray clothes my mother always bought me because they don't show dirt. I started wearing colors. Deep blues, emerald greens. I became Sophia, just Sophia. Not Mira's sister, not the disappointment. I was happy. It was a quiet, steady happiness. It wasn't the frantic, high-stakes drama of my childhood. It was boring and it was beautiful. Then the letter came. It had been 5 years. 5 years of silence. 5 years of peace. The envelope was heavy, cream-colored, with silver calligraphy. I found it in my mailbox on a Tuesday in November. I knew the handwriting. It wasn't my mother's. It was my Aunt Sarah's, my father's sister. I opened it standing in my kitchen, while my cat, Luna, wove between my legs. The honor of your presence is requested at the marriage of Daniel James Clean to Emily Rose Porter. Daniel. My cousin Daniel. My heart softened. Daniel was the only person in my extended family who had ever been kind to me. When we were kids at family reunions, while the adults fawned over Mira, Daniel would sit with me on the porch and play cards. He never treated me like the invisible one. When I disappeared, Daniel was the only one who found my LinkedIn profile and sent a message. I know you cut them off. I get it. I'm not gonna tell them where you are. Just hope you're good, cuz. I had replied, I'm good, thanks, Dan. That was it. Now he was getting married in Chicago. I looked at the date. December 15th. 3 weeks away. I knew who would be there, my parents, Mira. My stomach twisted into a knot. The old anxiety, the one I thought I had kickboxed away, came rushing back. My hands started to shake. Don't go, my brain screamed. It's a trap. It's not safe. But then I looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror. I was 27 years old. I was a senior systems architect. I owned my own life. If I didn't go, it meant I was still afraid of them. It meant they still had power over me. It meant that my rebirth was fragile. I didn't want to hide anymore. I RSVP'd, yes. The preparation for the wedding felt like preparing for war. I went shopping with Jenna. I need a dress that says I am successful and I don't need you, I told her. Red, Jenna said immediately. Power color. We found a deep crimson dress. It was tailored, elegant, and sophisticated. It was a dress for a woman, not a girl. I bought expensive heels. I got my hair done professionally. I wasn't going as their daughter. I was going as a guest. I flew to Chicago the morning of the wedding. I rented a car. I booked a hotel room on the other side of the city from the venue, so there was zero chance of running into them at breakfast. I drove to the church. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Breathe, I told myself. You are Sophia Clean. You build systems. You solve problems. This is just data. I walked into the church. I slipped into a pew in the back on the groom's side. I saw them immediately. They were in the second row. My father's hair was whiter. My mother looked smaller. She was wearing a pale blue dress, and Mira. She was sitting next to them. She looked exactly the same, just older. She was wearing a dress that was slightly too flashy for a church wedding, sequins, low cut. She was checking her makeup in a compact mirror during the prelude music. They didn't see me. I watched the ceremony. I watched Daniel marry Emily. I cried a little because Daniel looked so happy. Then came the reception. This was the dangerous part. I walked into the ballroom. I found my table. Table 18, far from the head table. Good, Daniel had protected me. I sat down. I ordered a glass of wine. I chatted with the strangers at my table, friends of the bride from college. They asked what I did. I'm a software engineer in Seattle, I said. Oh, wow, that's impressive, they said. It felt good to be a stranger. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. I froze. I knew the weight of that hand. I knew the smell of the perfume, lavender, and hairspray. I turned around. My mother was standing there. My father was a step behind her. They looked like they had seen a ghost. Sophia, my mother whispered. Her voice was trembling. I stood up. I was wearing heels, so I was taller than her now. I looked her in the eye. Hello, mother. Hello, father. My voice was calm. It was the voice I used in board meetings. You're here, my dad said. He looked older, tired. His eyes were scanning my face, trying to find the frightened teenager he used to know. He couldn't find her. Daniel invited me, I said. He's my cousin. You look different, Mom said. She reached out to touch my arm. I took a subtle step back. Her hand hovered in the air, then dropped. We tried to call you, she said. Her eyes were filling with tears. For years. Your number didn't work. We didn't know if you were dead or alive. I'm very much alive, I said. Why? She asked. The tears spilled over. Why did you do this to us? You just vanished. You broke our hearts, Sophia. The audacity of it took my breath away. I broke their hearts. The old Sophia would have apologized. The old Sophia would have stuttered and tried to explain. The new Sophia took a sip of wine. I didn't vanish, I said clearly. I graduated and you weren't there. Is this about the graduation? Mom said, her voice rising slightly, gaining that defensive edge I knew so well. Sophia, that was 5 years ago. It was a mistake. A scheduling conflict. You cut us out for 5 years because of one missed ceremony. She still didn't get it. She thought it was about one day. It wasn't one day, I said. It was every day. People at the nearby tables were starting to look. I didn't care. It was the graduation, I continued, ticking off items on my fingers. It was the car. It was the spelling bee. It was the stitches I got alone. It was the text message where you called my degree little. It was the fact that I was never your daughter. I was just the audience for Mira. That's not true, Dad interjected. We loved you both equally, I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Dad, I said, be honest, just this once, be an engineer about it. Look at the data. Who has a wall of photos? Who got the car? Who got the attention? Who got the empty seats? He opened his mouth to argue, but then he closed it. He looked at Mira, who was at the bar, laughing loudly, not even looking for them. Then he looked at me standing tall, successful, and completely cold. The truth hit him, I saw it land. We did the best we could, Mom sobbed. Parenting is hard. I know it's hard, I said, but you didn't just fail. You didn't even try with me. You chose her, over and over again. And that's fine, it's your right to choose. I leaned in closer. But it's my right to choose too, and I chose to leave. My mother looked shattered. She looked small. The giant, terrifying figure of my childhood was just an old woman in a blue dress who realized she had made a mistake she couldn't fix. Can we fix this? Dad asked. Can we start over? I looked at them. I felt a pang of sadness. I missed having parents, but I missed the idea of parents. I didn't miss these people. I don't know, I said honestly. Please, Mom whispered. Just unblock us. Let us talk to you. I'll think about it, I said. I turned back to my table. Enjoy the wedding. I sat down. My hands were shaking slightly, but my heart was steady. I had faced the monsters, and they weren't monsters. They were just people, flawed, selfish, sad people. And I was free. The morning after the wedding, I woke up in my hotel room with a headache. It wasn't a hangover, it was an emotional hangover. The adrenaline of confronting my parents had worn off, leaving me feeling hollowed out and exhausted. I ordered room service, coffee, toast, fruit. I sat by the window, looking out at the gray Chicago skyline, watching the snow flurry against the glass. My phone on the bedside table buzzed. It was an unknown number, a Chicago area code. I knew who it was. I stared at the screen. My instinct was to ignore it. I could pack my bags, drive to the airport, fly back to Seattle, and pretend the night before never happened. I could disappear again. It was easy now. I knew how to do it, but something stopped me. Running away was what I did when I was powerless. I wasn't powerless anymore. I picked up the phone. Hello, Sophia, it was my father. His voice sounded rough, like he hadn't slept. Hi, Dad, I said. There was a long silence on the line. I could hear him breathing. I could hear the faint sound of a TV in the background, probably the news. It sounded so domestic, so normal, it made my chest ache. I got your number from Daniel, he said. I hope that's okay. I bullied him into it, actually. It's okay, I said. Your mother is asleep, he said. She cried all night. I didn't say anything. I didn't offer comfort. That wasn't my job anymore. I wanted to call you, he continued, his voice cracking slightly, because I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what you said. About the data. My father was an accountant. He understood numbers. He understood ledgers. I sat up all night, he said, and I made a list in my head of the last 10 years. He paused. I couldn't remember your high school graduation speech, he whispered. I know I was there. I know you gave one. But all I remember is worrying about Mira's shoes because they were pinching her feet. I closed my eyes. Hearing him admit it was vindication, but it was also a fresh wound. I remember, I said softly. I talked about resilience. Yeah, he said. A heavy sigh rattled through the phone. You did. You lived it. Why are you calling Dad? I asked. I needed to know the goal. To tell you that you were right, he said. The words came out in a rush, like he had to get them out before he lost the nerve. You were right, Sophia. We failed you, we got so caught up in the noise of Mira. She was so loud, her problems were so big. And you were so quiet, you made it easy for us to ignore you. And we took the easy way out. I wasn't quiet because I wanted to be, I said. I was quiet because nobody listened. I know, he said. I know that now. And seeing you last night, seeing the woman you became, God, Sophia. You built a whole world without us. You're successful, you're strong, you're confident. He took a jagged breath. And the worst part is you had to be. We didn't help you build any of that. You did it in spite of us. Yes, I said. I did. I'm so sorry, he wept. It was the first time I had ever heard my father cry. I am so sorry. I sat there, holding the phone, listening to his sobs. 5 years ago, this apology would have fixed everything. 5 years ago, I would have rushed to comfort him. I would have said, "It's okay, Daddy, I forgive you." But I wasn't 22 anymore. "Thank you for saying that," I said. My voice was gentle but firm. I needed to hear it. "Can we fix it?" he asked again, desperation in his voice. "Can we come visit you in Seattle? Can we be part of your life? I want to see your apartment. I want to meet your friends." I looked out the window at the snow. I thought about my yellow rug. I thought about Leo and Priya. I thought about the peace I had built. If I let them in, I let the chaos in. If I let them in, I let Mira in. I let the judgment in. I let the old patterns try to re-establish themselves. "I don't think so," I said. "Not right now." "But I apologized," he said, sounding confused. "We're your parents." "I know," I said. "But forgiveness isn't a light switch, Dad. You can't just flip it on because you finally realized the room was dark. You left me in the dark for 20 years. "So that's it?" he asked. "We're just strangers." "We've been strangers for a long time," I said. "I'm just finally being honest about it." "Will we ever speak again?" I thought about it, truly thought about it. "Maybe," I said. "Maybe not. I need time. I need to decide what I want. For the first time, Dad, I'm going to do what's best for me. Not for the family, not for Mira, for me." He was silent for a long time. "Okay," he said finally. His voice was defeated. "Okay. You earned that right." "Goodbye, Dad," I said. "Goodbye, Sophia," he whispered. "I love you, even if you don't believe it." "I believe you believe it," I said, and I hung up. I didn't block the number this time. I didn't need to. I just put the phone down. I felt lighter. Not happy exactly, but lighter. The heavy sack of rocks I had been carrying, the need for their validation, the anger, the confusion was gone. I had laid it down. I packed my bag. I checked out of the hotel. I drove to the airport. I was going home. The flight back to Seattle was different. The sky was clear. I watched the Rocky Mountains pass below me, snow-capped and majestic. When I landed, it was raining again. But this time, it didn't look gloomy. It looked like Seattle. It looked like home. I took an Uber to my apartment. I walked up the stairs. I unlocked the door. Luna meowed and rubbed against my ankles. The apartment smelled like vanilla and old books. My yellow rug was bright and cheerful on the floor. I dropped my suitcase. I kicked off my heels. I walked to the fridge. There were no pictures of Mira. There were pictures of me and Jenna hiking. Pictures of the team at work. A magnet from a trip I took to Portland alone. It was a gallery of my life. My phone pinged. It was a text from Daniel. "Saw your parents at breakfast. They looked rough. Dad told me you talked. Proud of you cuz you stood your ground." I smiled. Then another text, from Priya. "Hey, you back, we're going for tacos and margaritas tonight. You in? Leo is buying." I typed back immediately. "I'm in. Save me a seat." Save me a seat. I realized then that I didn't have to save seats for people who didn't want them anymore. I had people saving seats for me. I went into my bedroom and changed out of the power dress. I put on my favorite oversized sweater and leggings. I looked in the mirror. I looked tired, but my eyes were bright. I thought about my parents. I knew they were hurting. I knew they were probably sitting in their kitchen right now, looking at the wall of joy, realizing it was a shrine to their failure, not their success. I felt a twinge of pity, but it wasn't my burden to carry. I had spent my childhood trying to be fine so they wouldn't have to worry. I had spent my adolescence trying to be invisible so I wouldn't be a burden. Now I was just Sophia. I wasn't a victim anymore. Victims are things that happen to people. I was a survivor. I was an architect. I was a woman who had walked through the fire of neglect and come out the other side made of steel. I grabbed my keys. I kissed Luna on the head. "I'm going out," I told the cat. "I'm going to be with my family." I walked out the door and into the rain. The cool water felt good on my face. I walked toward the taco place, my steps light, my head high. I didn't win the moment they apologized. I didn't win the moment I confronted them. I won right now. In this quiet, rainy moment. I won because I was walking toward people who loved me, in a city I chose, living a life that belonged, finally, completely to me. If you've ever been the strong one, the unseen one, the one who waits for love that never comes, listen to me. Stop waiting. Stop saving seats. Stop making yourself small. Pack your bags, block the number, build your own house. The view from here is beautiful.